The night always seems longer when your heart is heavy. The dashboard clock glows 1:13 a.m. Its soft light trembling on her face like a secret she can't yet tell herself. Rain streaks across the windshield in silver lines, and the phone in her hand is a cold stone, silent, still, a tiny altar of all the texts she's sent that never came back. She whispers his name under her breath as though that might conjure him, then laughs at herself. A broken little sound that tastes of salt. This is the moment no one photographs a woman alone in a parked car, trying to understand why she feels so small. Somewhere inside, she knows it isn't just about him. It's about something older, deeper, an ache she's carried long before he ever arrived. She stares at her own reflection in the rear view mirror. Why am I like this? The question isn't bitter, just tired. She thinks of the nights she stayed up hoping for a text. The mornings she poured coffee and courage into herself so she wouldn't look desperate. She remembers how his attention felt like sunlight on her skin and how quickly the shadows fell when he pulled away. A flash of memory, his thumb brushing a tear from her cheek the night he promised to figure himself out. Another, her standing at the window 2 weeks later, staring at the street, watching for a car that never came. The rain drums a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat she can't hear inside herself. What am I chasing? She murmurs. In the stillness of the car, the truth hovers, fragile but insistent. She isn't chasing him, she's chasing the feeling of being chosen. She's chasing the proof that she is worth the love she's been giving away for free. A flicker of clarity cuts through her exhaustion. She remembers something a friend once said. Real love doesn't make you feel like you're waiting at an empty station. Real love walks up to you with both hands open. Her fingers tighten around the steering wheel. She starts to realize that she's been mistaking scarcity for significance, confusion for chemistry. This isn't about some grand romance gone wrong. This is about an old story she's finally ready to stop telling herself. Her thoughts turn to childhood, being praised when she was quiet, adored when she was helpful, scolded when she asked for too much. Love had conditions, safety had strings. She grew up believing that devotion was something to earn and affection something to bargain for. Of course, she became the woman who waited, who overgave, who tried to be unforgettable in order not to be left. The pattern wasn't random, it was rehearsed. She leans back and closes her eyes, feeling the ache rise and soften in her chest. This isn't my fault, she whispers, but it is my responsibility. The words feel like a door opening. Responsibility doesn't mean blame. It means choice. And choice is a kind of power she forgot she had. Outside, the rain slows, and the silence inside the car thickens. In that stillness, she imagines him, not the real man, but the archetype she's been chasing, charming but absent, warm but unreliable, a ghost who leaves crumbs so she stays hungry. She sees for the first time how much of her identity has been wrapped around trying to awaken his heart. She wonders what would happen if she stopped. A voice in her mind, her own but wiser, asks, "What if the love you're waiting for is your own?" The thought lands like a stone in a pond. Ripples spread. Self-worth, boundaries, feminine power, the quiet dignity of walking away. She pictures herself not as a supplicant, but as a woman whose silence is not empty, but full. She sees a future where her energy isn't a magnet for inconsistency, but a sanctuary for respect. Her phone buzzes, just a notification from an app, nothing from him. She exhales a long, slow release. This is the first time in weeks she doesn't pick it up immediately. Something is shifting. The desperation is thinning. She realizes he may never text back, and yet, in this moment, she feels a strange sense of relief. She starts to narrate her own story in her head, almost like she's speaking to another woman sitting beside her. You deserve more than crumbs. You deserve reciprocity, and he will only feel the weight of your absence when you stop giving him the privilege of your presence. She can almost see herself in the third person, like a character at the turning point of a film. Images of other women flicker through her mind. Friends, strangers, viewers of a video like this, each with their own 1:13 a.m. moments, each gripping their phone like a lifeline, each quietly wondering why they're never enough. She wants to reach through the screen and hold their hands, tell them what she's just begun to tell herself. You've been programmed to over-give, but you can deprogram. You've been taught to settle, but you can unlearn. Her heart steadies. She begins to outline new rules in her mind. Not for him, but for her. No more chasing validation. No more mistaking mixed signals for mystery. No more shrinking to fit someone else's capacity. She doesn't know exactly what comes next, but she feels the power in the not knowing. It feels like standing on the edge of a new landscape at dawn. The rain stops. She turns the key, the engine hums, and in the mirror she catches her own eyes. Still tired, still tender, but also alive with something new, a flicker of self-respect that looks like firelight. She smiles just a little and drives away, not toward him, but toward herself. The road hums beneath the tires as she drives through the sleeping city. Neon signs flicker. Streetlights blur into gold streaks on the wet asphalt. With every block she puts between herself and that parked car moment, the ache in her chest changes shape. It's still there, but now it's mixed with curiosity, like a child turning over a stone to see what's been hiding underneath. She thinks about all the nights she's sat with girlfriends dissecting men's messages, analyzing emojis as though decoding some sacred script. How many hours of her life have been spent waiting, hoping, guessing? In the rearview mirror of her mind, she sees a trail of small compromises. The times she said yes when she wanted to say no, the apologies she offered just to keep the peace, the way she muted her own voice so she wouldn't scare him away. A memory surfaces from years ago. She's 8, standing in a kitchen too big for her small frame. Her mother is tired, her father distracted, and she's learned that being useful earns her a smile. She brings them water without being asked, folds napkins carefully, tries to be good. That's the night she first feels the glow of approval for shrinking herself. She doesn't know it then, but she's rehearsing a dance she'll perform in every relationship that follows. As the city rolls by outside her window, she starts naming the pattern: breadcrumbing, ghosting, hot and cold behavior. She remembers each man not as an individual villain, but as a mirror reflecting her own unresolved belief that love must be earned. It's easier to think he's complicated than to whisper, "I'm repeating something familiar." But tonight, something in her is brave enough to look. She speaks to herself softly, like narrating a documentary. Intermittent reinforcement. It's not romance, it's a slot machine. A hit of dopamine when he shows up, withdrawal when he disappears. That's why it feels addictive. The words sound clinical, but the realization is anything but. It's visceral. She can almost feel the hooks loosening from her nervous system. She imagines other women watching this scene like a film. They're in their kitchens, in their beds, on their commutes, eyes shining with recognition. They're not weak. She thinks they're conditioned. They've been taught to equate attention with worth, scarcity with value, confusion with chemistry. And no one told them that this isn't love. Her thoughts drift to him again, not with longing this time, but with a strange clarity. She sees how, in his world, her availability became background music, how easy it was for him to take her presence for granted. She doesn't need to demonize him to see the dynamic. Masculine psychology often registers loss late. The absence of her energy will be the echo he finally notices. But by then, she will already have moved on, not as revenge, but as release. She rolls down the window, lets the cool night air flood in. For a moment, she feels weightless. I've been waiting for someone to choose me, she thinks. But the choosing begins with me. The words vibrate in her like a chord struck on a piano. In her mind, she starts rewriting her own inner monologue. No more, why am I not enough? Instead, why am I giving so much to someone who gives so little? No more? If I just prove my worth, he'll stay. Instead, if he can't meet me, I will walk. These sentences feel like keys in her palm, unlocking doors she didn't know she had closed. She thinks of the feminine energy she's been told to suppress, softness mistaken for weakness, nurturing twisted into self-erasure. But true feminine power, she realizes, isn't over-giving. It's receptive, discerning, magnetic. It's knowing she is the ocean, not a puddle. It's silence that isn't passive, but potent. Her hands tighten on the steering wheel. She's not angry, she's awake. There's a difference. Anger burns, awakening illuminates. She can see now how trauma bonds masquerade as passion, how anxious attachment feels like love, but is really fear. She can see how her worth has been constant even when she forgot to believe in it. She imagines turning this car not just physically, but metaphorically, away from the old loops, toward something different. She pictures rituals she could start mornings without checking her phone, nights writing letters she'll never send, small boundaries that speak louder than any speech. She envisions herself months from now, sitting across from someone new, or alone and happy, eyes steady, heart unbent, energy unbargained. The city thins out, trees lining the road now. Stars blink above like witnesses. She slows the car and pulls over at a quiet overlook. The view spreads before her lights, rivers, a dark horizon. She steps out, feels the damp earth under her shoes. The night smells of rain and possibility. She speaks out loud for the first time, voice trembling but clear. I'm done proving. I'm done waiting at empty stations. I am not a placeholder. I am the whole story. The words float into the air, vanish, then return to her like a blessing. Inside, she feels a space opening. Not emptiness, but room for self-respect, for new patterns, for love that isn't laced with hunger. She knows this is only the beginning. Healing isn't a straight line. She will stumble. She will be tempted. But tonight she has crossed an invisible threshold. Somewhere she suspects he will feel her absence soon. He may reach out, regret heavy in his voice. But she will not wait for that moment to validate her worth. The lesson has already arrived. The power is already hers. She stands at the edge of the overlook a little longer, the city breathing below, her own breath matching it. The story isn't over, but it has changed. For the first time, she's not narrating his unpredictability. She's narrating her own return. And that, she realizes, is how men truly melt. Not when she bends further, but when she stands fully in herself. She turns back to the car, closes the door, starts the engine. The road ahead glistens like a new script waiting to be written. She smiles, a quiet, knowing smile. This isn't an ending. This is an emergence. Dawn is only a pale line on the horizon when she finally reaches the outskirts of town. The sky is still bruised with night, but there's a hint of light breaking through. She rolls down the window and lets the cold air sting her cheeks. This is what new beginnings feel like. She thinks, not fireworks, but a quiet clarity, a slow unraveling of old knots. She parks near a lake where mist floats over the water like breath. Sitting on the hood of her car, she watches ripples spread across the surface. Every ripple feels like a memory surfacing. His laugh echoing through her apartment, his hand resting just lightly enough to keep her wondering. His voice saying, "I'm not ready," while his eyes begged her not to leave. For so long, she called that confusion intimacy. She can see now it was only ambiguity disguised as passion. She closes her eyes and listens for the part of her that still wants to check her phone. That little tug is still there, but weaker now, like a fading radio station. She lets it pass through her like a breeze. She pictures him waking up, reaching for his phone, scrolling through her messages, noticing the silence where her presence used to be. She can almost hear the delayed regret forming in his chest, but instead of imagining it with a sense of triumph, she feels compassion. He's trapped in his own patterns too. His regret is his teacher, not her vindication. She no longer needs his awakening to validate her own. The mist swirls and she begins to speak softly, as if to the woman she used to be and to every woman who might be listening. He will feel your absence in ways he never felt your presence. That's not because you weren't enough. It's because you finally stopped feeding a dynamic that was starving you. The words vibrate in the cool morning air. They're not rehearsed. They're arriving. She thinks of all the little girls who learn to dim themselves for approval, of all the women who grow up thinking that over giving is love, that patience will be rewarded with permanence. She thinks of herself only weeks ago, waiting for a message, bargaining with silence. And she realizes that the power she's tasting now isn't about withholding. It's about returning to her own center, her own worth, her own life. She slides off the hood and walks to the water's edge. Her reflection stares back, hair messy, eyes ringed with fatigue. But there's a steadiness there that wasn't before. She kneels, scoops up a handful of cold water, and lets it trickle through her fingers. I release the need to be chosen by someone who can't show up, she whispers. I choose me. It's not a mantra, it's a vow. As she stands, she imagines what comes next. She sees herself moving through her days without the constant hum of waiting, answering her own needs before anyone else's, saying no without apology, saying yes without fear. She sees how feminine power isn't about hardening, it's about softening inward, holding her own heart so no one else has to hold it hostage. She pictures new conversations, new dating experiences, new friendships, all filtered through a new standard: reciprocity, safety, respect. She walks back to the car, opens her journal, and begins to write. Not about him, but about herself. She writes down the truths she's uncovered tonight. I am not here to be a rescue project. My worth does not increase when someone finally notices me. Silence can be love for myself. Walking away is sometimes the deepest form of intimacy with my own soul. She pauses and smiles at the last line. This is what she wanted all along. Not a man to melt for her, but a life where she doesn't have to melt herself down to fit into someone else's palms. The sun edges higher, scattering gold over the lake. In her mind, she rehearses how she will live differently. When she meets someone new, she will no longer rush to fill the silence with proving. She will let the other person reveal themselves. She will remember that magnetism isn't born from overextending, but from grounded self-respect. She will trust that the right man, or no man at all, will meet her at eye level, not at a pedestal she's built for them. She imagines speaking directly to a viewer, a woman still in the middle of her 1:13 a.m. moment. You don't have to earn consistency. You don't have to beg for clarity. You don't have to shrink to be loved. The part of you that's aching isn't weak. It's wise. It's calling you back to yourself. Let it. The words come out warm but sharp, nurturing but awakening. She knows they're landing somewhere out there. She takes a deep breath and closes her eyes. In the quiet of that morning, she senses the collective exhale of women choosing themselves one by one. She feels part of something bigger than her own story. A shift, a rising, a a reclamation of feminine energy, not as a performance, but as a birthright. Her phone buzzes on the passenger seat. She doesn't even glance at it. Instead, she turns the key, starts the engine, and drives toward the rising sun. The road is open, the sky widening above her like a promise. In the rear view mirror, the lake disappears, but the vow remains. She speaks one last time, as if closing a letter. I will not settle for crumbs again. I will not confuse scarcity with value. I will not perform for love. I will be loved where I do not have to vanish to be kept. And until then, I will love myself so completely that no absence can hollow me. The words feel like wings. She smiles a real smile now and lets the day swallow the night behind her. And somewhere out there, a man wakes up to the echo of her absence and begins to understand what he lost. But by then, she's already whole. By then, she's already free. By then, she's already home. There's a strange thing about heartbreak at night. It doesn't feel like heartbreak. It feels like erasure, like pieces of you quietly disappearing while the world keeps sleeping. I remembered every time he said he needed space and how I gave it without question. Every plan rearranged so I could fit into his life. Every silent hope that this time would be different. I thought about the first time he pulled me close and whispered promises of forever, and how those words tasted like sugar then, but ash now. And somewhere between the memories, an unfamiliar thought rose like a flare. Maybe it's not him that's slipping away. Maybe it's me leaving myself behind. I took a deep breath and let it shake through me. That's when I noticed the rain against the window, tiny rivers racing each other down the glass. Each droplet a memory of the times I'd sat here telling myself that real love was patient, that people needed time to grow, that my job was to hold on until he saw my value. But tonight, as the rain fell, it sounded different, like applause for a decision I hadn't yet made. My grandmother's voice drifted through my mind, something she'd said when I was 14 and crying over a boy who'd ignored me. A woman who forgets her own worth will never be remembered the way she deserves. Back then, it felt dramatic. Now, it felt prophetic. I wondered how many women were sitting in rooms just like mine right now, staring at unread messages, shrinking themselves into puzzle pieces that don't fit, thinking that if they were just a little less, it'd finally be enough. It's a quiet epidemic. This over, giving. No one sees it. No one stages interventions. We just call it love, call it loyalty, call it compromise. But it isn't. It's a slow undoing of self. And as I sat there, the slow undoing turned into a scream inside me, though my lips never moved. I can't do this anymore. The first tear came without permission, followed by another and another, until my cheeks were wet. But it wasn't the kind of crying that leaves you weaker. It felt like some ancient part of me was finally surfacing, the part that remembered being whole before I learned to barter my value. In that moment, I began to see the pattern, not just with him, but with every him before. The way I'd mistaken intensity for intimacy, potential for reality, crumbs for a feast. the way my heart had been trained to chase what hurts, because hurt felt familiar. I closed my eyes and let memories flicker like film reels. The college boyfriend who disappeared for days, but always came back with an apology and a grin. The coworker I'd dated who told me I was too good for him, yet still called me at midnight. The man I'd almost married who said he wasn't ready but wanted to keep me close. Different faces, same pattern. And me, the common denominator, believing that if I stayed long enough, gave enough, forgave enough, one day I'd be chosen. One day I'd be enough. But here's the truth I had avoided for so long. The truth that burned behind my eyelids that night. I was already enough. I had always been enough. The problem wasn't my worth. It was where I was placing it. I had been handing it over like currency to people who couldn't afford it. As this realization unfolded, it didn't feel like an epiphany. It felt like grief. Grief for the girl I had been, for the years I had lost, trying to be small enough to fit into someone else's capacity. And yet, beneath the grief, there was a flicker, a tiny, steady flame of something else. Not anger, not bitterness. Something quieter. Clarity. I thought about the science behind addiction, how the brain craves intermittent rewards more than consistent ones. I had read about trauma bonds once, how they keep you tethered to people who wound you because the pain relief cycle mimics love. And suddenly it made sense. This wasn't just about him. This was about neural pathways, about old survival strategies, about a system inside me that had been trained to confuse inconsistency with desire. Realizing this didn't absolve him of his choices, but it freed me from thinking it was all my fault. I opened the window just a crack and let the cool air in. It smelled like wet earth and possibility. Somewhere deep down, a new voice began to whisper, tentative but sure. What if the love you're waiting for begins with you? The thought startled me. For years, self-love had sounded like a cliché, a bumper sticker solution to a cathedral-sized wound. But tonight, in the soft chaos of rain and regret, it felt like the only true thing. I imagined a future version of myself, not bitter, not closed off, but clear. A woman who no longer negotiated her boundaries for breadcrumbs, who matched consistency instead of promises, who believed that walking away wasn't losing, but choosing. A woman who loved deeply, but never at the cost of herself. She felt like a stranger and like home all at once. The phone buzzed again. His name lit up the screen. I didn't open it, not out of punishment, but because I realized something profoundly. For the first time, his timing didn't control mine. For the first time, I wasn't waiting. I wiped my face, stood up, and walked to the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't fixed or finished or healed, but she was awake. And sometimes, that's the most powerful beginning of all. That night, as the city slept and the rain slowed, I whispered a vow I barely understood but knew I needed. I will never abandon myself again. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, like planting a seed in soil you're finally ready to tend. And in that quiet vow, something shifted. The heartbreak didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip. The fear of being alone didn't vanish, but it no longer dictated my choices. The regret still stung, but it began to transform into resolve. What I didn't know then, what I would only come to see later, was that this moment, this small act of not opening a message, of staying with myself instead of reaching outward, was the hinge on which my whole life would turn. Because that's how transformation often begins. Not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet refusal to keep betraying yourself. I closed the window, turned off the phone, and crawled into bed. Outside, the first hint of dawn painted the horizon, and somewhere between exhaustion and awakening, I realized this was not the end of love. This was the beginning of a different kind of love. The kind that starts within, radiates outward, and attracts only what matches it.